Welcome back to the Wise Practice Podcast. And today I have Jenny Hughes, PhD, licensed clinical psychologist specializing in trauma and PTSD. She supports helpers and healers through the common experience of vicarious trauma as the founder of the Brave Trauma Therapist Collective. Jenny helps trauma therapists be human again as they learn how to manage vicarious trauma and enhance vicarious resilience together. As a clinician, she practices brain spotting, EMDR, and cognitive processing therapy. She is the author of the PTSD Recovery Workbook and Triggers to Glimmers, a vicarious resilience journal and workbook. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, so before we get into it, could you share a little bit about yourself, kind of where you're located? And it sounds like you have your own practice. I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
I am currently located in Houston, Texas. I am from Colorado. I have lived in California, New Orleans. A lot of my training as a psychologist took me around the country. And I've been in Houston since 2018 now.
Okay.
I am a mom of two little kids. They're 2 and almost 5. I have an amazing 13-year-old stepdaughter, two dogs, and we're just sort of living the semi-suburban life here in Houston.
That's awesome. Yeah. Wow. And do you have a practice there in Houston?
Yeah, so I work for UT Health, so that's the University of Texas Health Science Center. And I had a private practice from 2019 until just recently, but I'm going full time at UT because I'm going to be the program director of our new Master's in Clinical Psychology program. So I'm still able to practice clinically through UT, but I wanted to be able to really work with up and coming clinicians. And so I was able to move my private practice and, kind of absorb some of that through UT, still be able to serve those clients and then take this kind of next step in some of my professional work.
I love that. Oh, that's so great. You're going to be investing in the next generation of clinicians. So great. Okay. So your expertise, one of them is vicarious trauma. We know a little bit about that in working with clients, but I think we're going to talk about that more from a business perspective today. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one of the hats that I wear is supporting fellow therapists, and trauma therapist is sort of my specialty, but I think we all work with trauma no matter kind of what our training is. And so it is so important to me to normalize the experience of vicarious trauma because we're taught in grad school and beyond that it's this boogeyman under the bed and that it's something that we need to avoid as clinicians, like do not
Uh,
experience vicarious trauma. But it just happens, right? When we engage empathically with the people that we are serving or the employees that we are supporting, we are going to experience vicarious trauma because that's the pathway to it is empathic engagement. And
mm.
so we can't walk through water without getting wet. We can't be clinicians without being affected by our work. And that's not a bad thing. It can certainly cause more problems if we aren't able to wring out our vicarious trauma sponge. And though the other side of vicarious trauma is vicarious resilience. You read both of those words in my bio, and they're both accessed through this empathic engagement, the human connection that we get to experience as clinicians and also as therapy business owners. And vicarious resilience is all of the glimmers, all of the beautiful things we get to soak up from our interactions. And from a business perspective, this matters for business owners because not only for themselves do they need to understand it, but especially for group practice owners, they need to understand these dynamics in their clinicians and the whole system that they are creating and supporting.
Mm. Yeah, I'm just sitting here thinking about specific situations.
Like what? So tell
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Well, this is not technically therapy, but more in the business side. I actually was just visiting with a school because the schools are all going back at the time of this recording. And so we make an effort to go into different schools and meet with the counselors. And one of them was sharing about all the stuff going on in the school, right? I'm not even the one with the students. And I'm like having this empathy for this counselor who's managing so many different students. And when I got in my car, I was like, ooh, that was heavy. Like I didn't
Hmm.
realize how heavy it was till I got in the car and I was like, and man, you're probably gonna have a heyday with me right now. And then I was like, I want to offload this on somebody. That was what I thought. I have so much to offload that's all in my head and in my gut. And how do
Yeah.
I like get this out? Do I need to journal when I get back? What do I need to do? And then I was like, I got this podcast I'm running into. I came straight here.
Did that happen this morning?
Oh, literally, that just
Oh,
happened. I like literally just got here. But yeah, I could tell so many stories, but that's one of them.
well, but that's such, I mean, such a perfect story. And also just the arc of it. I mean, we have to be able to talk about this stuff, right? And you're describing this parallel process. We all know the parallel process as clinicians, right? Like the things our clients are telling us affect us, the things we tell our supervisors or our consultants affect them.
Hmm.
That's exactly what happened to you today. And especially when we go out on our own, once we're licensed, and when we are the leader, when we are running the business, it can feel so incredibly lonely if we don't have other colleagues that we can talk to about it. And that's a big reason why I started Brave, because one, HIPAA, we have to honor and protect all of the things that our clients tell us. And also, there are legal and safe ways to talk to fellow clinicians about our experiences, which is really unique because we can't go home and, like, my husband is a jazz musician. He did not sign up as a therapist, especially not as a trauma therapist. So it's just not okay for me, like, ethically, morally, to share these things with him, HIPAA aside. He didn't sign up for that,
Hmm.
but a lot of us clinicians did. And when we have spaces where we can talk about these things in safe, supported, and adaptive ways, it really makes a difference.
Mm. Yeah, my husband's a pastor.
Hmm.
So we have like
So
a double
he signed
whammy.
up for a lot of this too, right?
Yeah.
What is that like? Do y'all talk about kind of the people that you're serving and supporting?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. And I have to be like, okay, this is our conversation. We don't let it go out of this space, But yeah, supporting each other. And when he was a pastor at a church a lot closer to my office, now he's at a different church. That also brought dynamics because a lot of the clients from that church would come to this practice. Now they didn't see me because I wanted to have that separation, but they wanted to come here because they trust me. And
Yeah.
I have faith-based therapists that could work with those clients and said they would work with other people in the practice. And usually I didn't hear things unless something terrible happened, then I'm hearing about it. And it's just this whole spiral, right?
Right. But having that person, and for you, I mean, with it being your partner and your husband, there are definitely a whole other layer of dynamics. Like you can see me looking up as I'm like thinking through all of that. But it also is sort of a superpower, I imagine, at times, because you get each other, you get the work. And one thing that might be interesting for both you and your husband, and also with the clinicians that you are serving, is starting to be more intentional of talking about vicarious resilience and the glimmers that are
Mhm.
happening in the relationships between clinician and client, amongst all of the clinicians in your practice, et cetera. Because these are those beautiful moments where we get those warm fuzzies. We feel connected with our faith, our spirituality, the person even more so in the room. And they often happen in unexpected moments. They're not necessarily the big, oh, I graduated from therapy or I made this huge breakthrough. A lot of times, for me anyway, they happen when if you were a fly on the wall in my therapy session, you would see a client who looked like they were in a lot of pain, really dealing with something. And for me, as their clinician, who I know them so deeply, I also know where they're going. I know the work that they're doing and where it's going to take them. And so that's inspiring for me because I can see the healing in real time in my work. And so that's another way that we can experience vicarious resilience. And when we share it with other clinicians and people who get it, we get to enhance it and it becomes this renewable energy source for us.
Mm. Yeah, because when you first said vicarious resilience, I was thinking, what does she mean by that? So I love what you just said. And now I'm like reflecting on this experience I just had with these school counselors. And when I was driving home, I was also thinking, I felt so connected to them.
Yes,
And
yes.
that brought me a lot of life because as a business owner, I spend so much time managing the business, I can lose that human interaction, and that brings me so much joy. So, right before we got on, I was shooting them a follow-up email and saying, hey, I know that we talked about a lot. and you do a lot, but y'all brought me a lot of life and joy today. And I love
Yes.
that I got to connect with you. And so like that brings up, I guess what you're talking about. Is that a good example?
That is a perfect example. And I have this exercise that I often teach folks in Brave and elsewhere called soft transitions.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps us to identify moments of vicarious resilience, to help us transition between our roles in life. Because I think that the expectation that we need to leave work at work is really toxic and is hurting a lot of clinicians because we're still the same human. And so when we think about our dear clients at dinner, it's so easy to shame ourselves like, oh, why couldn't I just have left that in my office, right? And so we have to have a way to transition, and vicarious resilience can help with that. Of at the end
Mm.
of the day or between sessions, whatever it might be, thinking about one or two moments of vicarious resilience, and then doing essentially a gratitude practice. And it can either be things you're grateful for or people that you want to say thank you to. And that's what you did today.
Oh, I love that. Talking about, and I'm a huge Enneagram fan.
Hmm.
Okay. I'm like
Yep.
really in it. And so that's something that's interesting about my husband and I. He's a 5. So he's got the gift of detachment.
Hmm.
Man, I wish I had that gift.
Hmm.
But I also love my gift because I'm very attached. I'm an Enneagram
Hmm.
1. I feel it in my gut. I'm very invested in what I do. And I used to do what you just said. I used to say, I wish I didn't care so much. Let that go. Stop that. And after a while, I was like, you know what? I deeply love people and things. So
Yep.
just start embracing that. And so I started embracing it, what you're talking about, and it made things so much better. I felt like I was trying to be someone I wasn't. So it's how
Mhm.
can I be this person, love these things deeply, and it's okay to talk about that appropriately with my spouse in an appropriate setting. And sometimes even with other people, like there'll be times that maybe a friend is like, you don't seem very happy or something's going on. I'm like, well, yeah, that client shared something really heavy with me today, and I'm sitting with it. And that's
Yep.
okay to hold that space for that client in the appropriate amount of time, and I will process that and I will get through it. But it does help to just share that, even with someone else that doesn't even know any of the details about it.
Hmm. I'm curious if you, as we're talking about it now, what do you think that that has done for you as a group practice owner, as the leader of your business, in terms of how you approach supporting your employees, your clinicians, and the work that they're doing of lean into who you are as opposed to trying to be something that you're not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it reminds me of a conversation I actually had with a team member this week, where I don't know if she quite brought it up or I was just sensing it, but I started talking about, and she's a newer therapist. I started talking about like seasons of therapy. And we have seasons where we feel more burnt out, overwhelmed, difficult. And sometimes we can point our finger and say, okay, well, I had 5 suicidal clients in the past 2 weeks or whatever.
Right.
Sometimes you just can't. And you just might not know. And that's just the nature of the longer you do this, there are going to be seasons that feel really great and seasons that don't feel so great. And just accepting that and being okay with it. And she
Hmm.
was like, I'm so glad you said that because I just never realized that's part of this. And so we had this bonding moment over that. And I was glad to be able to kind of give that to her.
Yeah, exactly. And then ultimately giving her permission to be where she is in her journey, in her process, and who she is as a human, to just be human. That's what we are as people.
Hmm. Definitely. So, what other kind of suggestions as a group practice owner do you have in working with our team members?
So, first and foremost is naming and acknowledging that vicarious trauma is a normal thing, right? I said that earlier at the beginning. It's not the boogeyman under the bed. It is already happening to all of us. And we can't
Hmm.
we can't pretend that it's not. So calling a thing, naming it. I have a free vicarious trauma tracker that a lot of folks will use, and I have a number of group practices as a part of the Brave Trauma Therapist Collective, and their practice owners use a lot of our tools in, for example, their supervision meetings or their team meetings to really help them talk about some of these tough topics that we aren't kind of given permission to discuss as the leaders of a business, where we think that maybe it's going to be too dangerous or too scary, or we're going to kind of like, a lot of people are afraid to ask about trauma, especially outside of the therapy space. I'm going to re-traumatize someone by asking them about their trauma. No, it's already happened to them. They know it's real. So we also know the real experiences in our lives as
Totally.
clinicians and as group practice owners. When that conversation is open, when your clinicians know they can talk about it, you are going to improve their quality of life in your practice. You're going to have better retention of employees, and they're going to feel better about the work they're doing with their clients. And so it's a win-win for everyone. And then combining that with that other side of the coin, there's the vicarious trauma and then the vicarious resilience. And really teaching your clinicians how to, first of all, what is vicarious resilience? How do we then notice it, identify it in our work? How do we install it in our brain and body? And then how do we enhance it by talking about all these beautiful glimmers as a team? And so, even
Mhm.
just those two skills and approaches to interacting with your clinicians is going to really truly make a difference for your business and for your bottom line.
Mhm. I think something to be said here is, as I'm listening to you, I'm like, well, yeah, that makes sense. But I think that we know things, but we don't communicate things, right? And
Mhm.
so our team members need us to be talking about it, even if it's in your head, and even if you think, oh, everyone knows about trauma, we hear about it all the time. We need to be talking about that and exactly what it looks like.
Yep, because your team is following your lead, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they are relying on you to guide, especially those difficult conversations, and to let them know that those difficult topics are welcome in whatever spaces are set up or, designed for those discussions. And
Yeah.
when they know that they can talk about those things, their nervous systems are going to regulate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your all of your interactions within your team are going to feel so much more connected, and there's going to be so much less anxiety, meetings after the meeting, side talk, things like that, that
Yeah.
none of us want, but are also coping mechanisms of employees and team members who are maybe not feeling really regulated in spaces within our businesses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm also sitting here personally and as a consultant thinking about the trauma we experience with our team. Like team members that leave abruptly, the chaos that occurs with client rescheduling. Um, I mean, so many things as a business owner. Maybe people who had a terrible debt and came out of it, they're fearful it's going to happen again. So, not sure if that's something that you talk a lot about, like the trauma of actually owning the business and how that impacts the business owner. Okay, you're saying, oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, so I was really fortunate to go through a Dare to Lead training program last year with a trainer. And it was so incredibly helpful for me to think about my own leadership style. And then how do I support these business owners and these leaders who are in my space and who are coming and saying, like, hey, I recognize that something like Brave or a training that you give is going to be really beneficial to my clinicians. And also, knowing that that business owner, that leader can feel so very alone. And when they feel alone, it makes it even more difficult to acknowledge, hey, this team member left with really, really little notice, right? Or under X, Y, and Z circumstances. Or we're not really meeting our numbers this month. And I don't really know how to talk to you all about that without feeling like I'm being pressured and focused on productivity. And so we all need to have our own spaces. And so for leaders in group practices, knowing who are your folks that you can talk to so that you can have those difficult conversations with your team. Also
Yeah.
knowing, like Brene Brown always says, clear is kind. And so acknowledging the thing that everyone already knows is in the room, is in the
Yeah.
space, is in the relationship. And
Mhm.
that can be really scary. And that is really activating in our bodies as the leader. But once we kind of say the first awkward words, once we kind of cut through that fear and anxiety in our own bodies and we put it into the space, more often than not, your team is going to respond. It's going to open things up. And it is ultimately going to bring people closer together.
Mhm. Yeah. Gosh, it's so important. I think the idea of community,
Yeah.
is a big part of it. And this year I implemented a new leadership structure. Really, it was me, and I kind of had some people helping me lead the practice, but I wouldn't say we were doing it as a team. And now I have this like a really solid leadership team, and that has made the world of difference. So I resonate a lot with what you were just saying about things I was scared to say, but then I forced myself to say them, and how much better it got, and the healing it's been for me, and just the weight that's been taken off of me by having, a supportive leadership team.
And for folks who are earlier on in their process of growing their group practice,
Yeah,
find your colleagues that are also
that's
doing
right.
this work, fellow group practice owners, so that
Hmm.
you can, even if you don't have a full-fledged leadership team within your practice yet, you have other folks who are doing that work. And for example, listening to this podcast, that can count as one of your colleagues, right? Because you're able to hear and resonate with so many of the things that are discussed. And then finding those other folks in your circle that understand your work as a business owner, as the group practice owner, as a leader, and ideally also as a clinician. Not all of them have to understand that, but it's really unique to be a therapist, to then be a leader of therapists. And so we got to have spaces where we can be seen, heard, and understood.
100%. I was just talking to one of my interns yesterday and I was like, yeah, I go to therapy,
Yep.
not to anyone in town. Like I don't want people in town hearing my stuff, but like you got to find that space so that you do have that. And I know that that's something that you provide with Brave, is kind of that space. I'm guessing you work with people all over the country.
All over the
Could you talk?
world.
Yeah, could you talk a little bit about your program?
Yeah, so in Brave, we are an online community for trauma therapists, and we have 5+ calls per month. Sometimes it varies depending on how many trainings we're offering in a given month. But we have different calls for consultation. We have different consultation calls every month. I do a training every month on things like vicarious trauma, vicarious resilience, burnout, things like that. And then we have lots of different guest experts who come in to teach us just amazing topics. And a lot of those offer CEs as well.
Oh, that's great. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Oh, so all over the world? That's great.
Yeah, so we have folks in the UK. We just had someone who joined from Sweden, actually.
I love that.
We have folks in New Zealand, Australia, Canada. It is an English speaking community, and so we're pulling from places where there are English speakers, but we have folks from all over the world. And they're able to connect 24/7 too, because we have a private online space off of all of the regular apps and things like that,
Yeah.
where people can get that support anytime, because consultation needs and support needs don't only happen on Fridays at noon.
No, they do not. No, they do not. And I just love this idea that we're all over the place doing this work. And we're all connected in that human experience of being therapists. So I just love thinking about the people that are in other countries doing that, and I'm doing it. Um, are they all practice owners or just as long as they're therapists, or how does that work?
So, I mean, as long as you're a therapist, essentially. So, we have a lot of different group practices who have really embedded Brave as essentially a benefit for their employees. Something that if their employees want to opt in, the group practice owners will support that. And it's a very low cost. It's just $12 a month to be
Oh,
a
wow.
part of Brave. We want it to be accessible for both individual folks who are in private practice, or maybe in an agency organization and are seeking this for themselves. We also want it to be accessible for businesses that want to provide this support for their employees. One thing that's really great for the business owners too is because we offer so much consultation and training, it is able to like fill in and offload some of those needs depending on the business structure. So, of
Mm,
course, we're not providing supervision towards licensure, but we are offering multiple consultation spaces for their clinicians to get that support, which frees up the group practice owner or the designated supervisor to do additional things or other things that they are also wanting to pursue.
I love that. That is so important because, boy, my therapists are all asking for more education, and there's only so much education I can give.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And
Mhm.
then you have someone who, a whole organization that can find those experts, bring them in, and then also provide the CEs for you in addition to that case consultation piece.
Yeah, that's so good. Is there anything else that is important to mention here that we might have left off?
I think bottom line, and we've talked about this throughout, is just giving ourselves permission to be human.
Hmm.
That's what we are. We are humans. We can't do this alone. And so knowing that it's okay to reach out, to ask for help, and that there are safe spaces where you can land. So one thing that I know personally, and also just kind of in the wider experience, is a lot of therapists have had difficult experiences in other therapist spaces. Right. And
Oh
I think that
yeah,
that's
I
something to
know.
name, to acknowledge. And I'm not saying that Brave is perfect by any means. And it is also a space where we are all agreeing that we are human. We are all agreeing that we are here to support each other and to come to the table with no judgment, no name calling, none of those things. Because if we can't talk about our experiences as therapists, that's what leads to mistakes. That's what leads to potentially bad things happening in our careers and in our
Hmm.
therapist spaces. And so,
Hmm.
whether it's Brave or anywhere else, find a space where you feel like you can land, where you can be human and be yourself. It's not about being perfect, but about finding those spaces to be human.
Hmm. Yes. Yes, and it definitely leads to mistakes when we're not. So I like that you added that in as well. So
Thanks.
you have got a freebie for us, a vicarious trauma tracker. Did I say that right?
Yes, so it's a vicarious trauma tracker, and it also includes a little mini course that I created to walk people through using the tracker, understanding what is vicarious trauma. You can find it at braveproviders.com/VT tracker, as in vicarious trauma tracker, and just can go grab it and use it. And as like always, I invite anyone to reach out with questions, with curiosities. I am here to help, and so I don't want anyone to hesitate to reach out.
That's great. Well, this has been such a good start to the conversation, and getting us talking about it, thinking about it, and getting therapists thinking about how do I implement this for myself and how do I implement this for my group practice. So I'll certainly be like munching on this as I think about how to do that. So, Jenny, this has been so enlightening and enjoyable. So thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful for this.